Francisco Franco Bahamonde was born on December 4, 1892 in the coastal city of Ferrol in Galicia, Spain. He was the second of 6 children in a family that had long traditions linked to the Spanish Navy. His father, Nicolas Franco, was a naval officer who came from a proud maritime lineage, but he was a man known for his erratic lifestyle, gambling, and womanizing. His mother, Maria del Pilar Bahamonde, was a devout Catholic woman, quiet and disciplined, who tried to shield her children from the instability of their father. The contrasts between his parents shaped young Francisco early in life, instilling in him both a sense of order and discipline inherited from his mother and an awareness of the destructive consequences of weakness and indulgence as seen in his father. From childhood, Franco was known for his small stature and serious demeanor. He was shy, reserved, and often kept to himself, preferring books about military history and stories of Spanish imperial glory. While his peers mocked him for his height and thin frame, Franco carried himself with a stoic determination that grew stronger with each year. His fascination with the military became obvious early, as he often expressed a desire to restore Spain to greatness after years of political chaos, economic decline, and lost colonies. This deep sense of national duty never left him, and it later became the justification for much of his life's actions. Education for Franco was shaped not through long academic pursuits but through his entry into the military. Because the Spanish Naval Academy had been closed at the time due to budget cuts, Franco could not follow the direct family tradition of becoming a naval officer. Instead, at the age of 14, he applied for the Infantry Academy of Toledo, one of the most prestigious military schools in Spain. His small build made it difficult at first, but his iron will and relentless discipline allowed him to graduate in 1910, one of the youngest in his class. His education was focused less on philosophy or liberal ideas and more on military tactics, history, and field discipline. This narrow but rigorous training gave Franco a highly practical mindset, teaching him to see the world through the lens of order, command, and obedience. It was at Toledo that Franco cemented his reputation as a man of strict habits, someone who rose early, kept meticulous order, and demanded the same from those around him. After his graduation, Franco was deployed to Morocco, where Spain was fighting a brutal colonial war against local resistance forces in the Rif Mountains. The war was bloody, chaotic, and unforgiving, and it became the defining stage of his early career. While many young officers were killed in the harsh conditions, Franco proved himself to be extraordinarily resilient and daring. He rose quickly through the ranks due to his courage, discipline, and refusal to back down in the face of overwhelming odds. By the age of 23, he had already earned the rank of captain and later lieutenant colonel. His strictness with his soldiers, his refusal to show weakness, and his relentless drive earned him both respect and fear. Wounds sustained in combat added to his aura as a hardened soldier. The Moroccan campaigns molded Franco into a commander who valued discipline above all else, despised weakness, and distrusted politicians who debated endlessly while soldiers bled on the battlefield. The rise of Francisco Franco into power was tied closely to the turbulent history of Spain itself. During the early 20th century, Spain was plagued by political instability, social unrest, and the rise of radical ideologies. By the 1930s, the Spanish monarchy had fallen, the Republic had been established, and the nation was torn between competing visions of the future. Liberals, socialists, communists, and anarchists clashed with conservatives, monarchists, and the powerful influence of the Catholic Church. Strikes, assassinations, and military uprisings became common. Franco, who had by then become the youngest general in Europe in 1926, remained cautious in public but deeply distrusted the left-wing forces gaining influence in Spain. When the Spanish Civil War broke out in July 1936, Franco was initially stationed in the Canary Islands. The uprising began with a group of generals rebelling against the Republican government, fearing it was sliding toward communism and chaos. Franco hesitated at first but quickly joined the rebellion. Through a combination of determination, strategy, and sheer ruthlessness, he emerged as the central figure of the nationalist faction. With the help of Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy, who supplied aircraft, weapons, and troops, Franco was able to airlift his forces from Morocco to Spain, a daring move that shifted the balance of the war. Over the next 3 years, Franco consolidated his command over the various factions of the right wing, eliminating rivals and presenting himself as the undisputed leader. The Civil War was one of the most brutal conflicts in modern European history. Franco's armies used sieges, executions, and terror to break resistance. Cities such as Guernica became infamous when German planes bombed them into ruins under Franco's approval, sending shockwaves across the world. By 1939, after nearly 500,000 deaths, Franco emerged victorious. He declared himself caudillo, or leader, of Spain, beginning a dictatorship that would last until his death in 1975. His rise had been marked by relentless ambition, cunning alliances, and an iron will to suppress any opposition. Once in power, Franco began shaping Spain according to his vision. His rule was authoritarian, centralized, and heavily tied to the Catholic Church and conservative values. Political parties were banned, dissent was crushed, and censorship became a weapon of control. Tens of thousands of Republican supporters were executed, imprisoned, or forced into exile. Fear became the foundation of his order. At the same time, Franco sought to rebuild Spain's economy and national pride. He promoted large infrastructure projects, encouraged a return to traditional values, and carefully positioned Spain as neutral during the Second World War, avoiding the devastation suffered by much of Europe. This neutrality allowed Spain to survive, but it also isolated the nation internationally, especially as the world condemned fascist regimes. The bad deeds of Francisco Franco remain a deep scar in Spanish history. His repression after the Civil War was merciless. Mass executions, concentration camps, and political prisons became common. Families of Republicans lived under constant fear, often punished simply for their associations. The cultural identity of regions such as Catalonia and the Basque Country was violently suppressed, with their languages banned in public life. Franco created a state where loyalty to his rule and to a narrow vision of Spain was enforced by the secret police and military courts. His censorship silenced writers, journalists, and artists, strangling intellectual life for decades. Critics describe his regime as one built on fear, blood, and silence, where opposition was not debated but simply erased. Yet Franco's rule also carried certain good deeds, which his supporters still point to today. After the devastation of the Civil War, Spain under Franco achieved a degree of stability. He prevented Spain from entering the Second World War, sparing the nation from greater destruction. During the later decades of his rule, especially in the 1960s, Spain experienced significant economic growth known as the Spanish Miracle. Tourism increased, industry expanded, and many Spaniards found a level of prosperity that had been unimaginable during the war years. Franco's defenders argue that his policies maintained unity and saved Spain from communism. However, this prosperity came at the cost of freedom, as the nation remained under authoritarian rule, and the wounds of the Civil War were never healed. The final years of Franco's life were marked by declining health but continued control. As his body weakened, he began planning for Spain's future without him. Franco declared that upon his death, the monarchy would be restored under King Juan Carlos, whom he had groomed for years. This was a calculated move, ensuring that his system would not collapse immediately upon his death. For decades, Franco had been the absolute ruler of Spain, the man whose decisions shaped the fate of millions. Francisco Franco died on November 20, 1975 after a long illness. His death ended nearly 4 decades of dictatorship. The days following his passing were filled with uncertainty. Some mourned him as a savior who had preserved Spain from chaos, while many others celebrated the end of his authoritarian rule. Within a short time, King Juan Carlos initiated a transition toward democracy, dismantling the structures of Franco's regime and leading Spain into a new era. Franco was buried in the Valley of the Fallen, a massive monument built during his rule, but decades later, his remains were exhumed and moved, as Spain continued to wrestle with the legacy of his dictatorship. Francisco Franco remains one of the most controversial figures of the 20th century. His life was defined by discipline, ambition, and an unwavering belief in his own vision for Spain. To his supporters, he was a soldier who saved the nation from communism and preserved unity. To his critics, he was a ruthless tyrant who silenced freedom, spilled innocent blood, and ruled through fear. The story of Franco is not only the story of one man but of a nation torn apart, rebuilt, and scarred by the price of authoritarian rule. His legacy still divides Spain, a reminder that the shadow of dictatorship does not fade quickly from the memory of a people.